Hello and welcome to another installment of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. I'm your host, Melissa Howes-Whitecross, and tonight we have an exciting session lined up for you. We want to celebrate the youth of our beautiful country, and this evening is all about inspiring and welcoming those young hearts and minds who want to know more about their natural world and what it is like to work in the conservation sector. A big BirdLife South Africa hello to all of you tonight. Welcome to those of you tuning in on Facebook Live. Remember that you can type your questions into the comment feed. And for those of you joining us for the first time on Zoom, you can send us your questions into the Q&A box. Let us know if you're going to use the hashtag Conservation Conversations, you can let us know that you're tuning in and what you think of tonight's webinar. And you can use that on whichever social media platform you prefer. I'd like to say a big thank you to all of you who continue to support the production of these webinars using that Cricut QR code you can see on your screen. We are extremely grateful for the support that has been shown so far. We're very excited to be partnering with Jacana Media tonight for our special Conservationist Kickstarter giveaway competition, where you can stand a chance to win some incredible natural history titles. We will be announcing the lucky winner tonight at the end of the webinar, so do stay tuned right till the end. Our friends Dave and Mike from the Better Birding webinars are returning to your screens tomorrow night to bring you the first installment of an amazing webinar on pelagic birds. Head over to the Better Birding Facebook page to find out more. Now tonight, I would like to welcome my BirdLife South Africa colleagues who have stepped up and given up their public holiday evening to share their journeys and passion for conservation. I'd like to welcome Dr. Simi Bizeng, who is our Regional Red List and KBA Program Officer. Good evening to you, Bizeng. Linda van den Heefer, who is our Vulture Project Manager. Hi, Linda. Samantha Ralston-Payton, who is the Birds and Renewable Energy Project Manager. Hello, Sam.
Hi.
Reason Nyengera, who is part of the Albatross Task Force. Hey, Reason.
Hello.
And Karina Kutzer, who is our Ngula Project Manager. Hey, Karina. Great, thanks to all of you for coming onto this panel tonight. Now, I'd like to ask each of you to briefly share who you are, how you got into conservation, and why you love working in conservation. So I'm going to start off with Linda this evening. Please, will you just introduce yourself and tell us your story?
Thanks, Melissa. I hope you can hear me okay.
I seem
to be having connection problems. Yes, thanks for inviting me to be here tonight. I'm the Vulture Project Manager at BirdLife South Africa. As I'm sure all of you are aware, vultures are in trouble, so they need all the help they can get. I do a lot of research on vultures, mostly looking at lead poisoning in whiteback vultures and also Cape vultures. And then I also work with landowners and other NGOs to implement what we call vulture safe zones, which is where we negotiate with landowners to manage their properties in ways that will make vultures safe, basically. I'm in my 40s, which I know will sound ancient to most of the listeners tonight, but I'm actually a newcomer to conservation. I only made the switch about 7 years ago. And I did that because I found working in the corporate world, which I did before then for many, many years, it didn't give me any joy anymore. So I decided to make a change, and I've never looked back. And I know how confusing it can be when you're 18 or 19 years old. Believe me, I was also 18 once, and it's incredibly confusing to decide what you're going to do with the rest of your life. But I'm here to tell you that it's actually never too late to make a change, and I'm living proof of that. And I've certainly never looked back. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Linda. And we certainly are glad that you made that change from corporate. We love having you on the team, and our vultures are in good hands with you leading the charge to save them. So keep it up. Bizeng, you're up next. Let's hear your story.
Thanks, Melissa.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. And I'm Simi Bizeng, a Cameroonian and a South African permanent resident. So I work for BirdLife, and my role is the Red List, Regional Red List and the KBA Program Officer. So for those of you who are not familiar, the Red List is the global standard that is used to categorize species according to threats. So you know which species are either critically endangered or extinct. And then the other side, the other angle that I support is what you call key biodiversity areas, which are sites that contribute globally to the persistence of biodiversity. So this is now at the landscape level. And yeah, I completed my PhD from the University of Johannesburg, where I study botany. And botany is the study of plants. And my research focused mainly on using molecular techniques, which such as DNA barcoding and climate change data to understand drivers of biodiversity loss. And my journey into conservation was really shaped by my family, and perhaps for many of the youths that are joining today, again, you find yourself in a similar situation like me. Coming from a very big family of 9, and also from a low income earning family, I really did not have the choice to choose what I wanted to do. But I got into conservation sort of like an accident, and everyone in the family saw me like the medical doctor of the family. So it became, that dream only became wishful thinking when I passed my advanced level, which is the matric equivalent in South Africa. And so when I was going to varsity, choosing which subjects to read was really a big divide and a strong divide amongst my siblings, for those that wanted me to pursue the medical or the environmental part. But again, after so much counseling and talking to people, I finally chose the environmental part. And this was really shaped by also family members, a family friend that was working for WWF at that time. So WWF is the worldwide fund for nature, also a big institution like BirdLife South Africa. And at this point, he was working in a newly created national park, which was also a transboundary national park shared between Cameroon, Gabon, and Congo-Brazzaville. So in this area, there were so many challenges in this area, and the biodiversity in this area was severely under threat from illegal activities like poaching, timber exploitation, and farming. And again, why at this site, I volunteered when I was at varsity. I volunteered with my lecturer, making several expeditions to the field, and I learned so many soft skills in terms of knowing what it takes to conserve species. So after that, I started looking at some of the challenges, the eminent challenges that are linked to biodiversity conservation, and what are those tools that are needed to save them. So from there, I moved on to do my master's and my PhD in trying to understand these skills better. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Simi. You certainly had an amazing journey to reach us at BirdLife South Africa, and you really do bring some awesome international flavor to our team. And we very often don't see Bazeng because he's quite a world traveler pre-COVID-19. How's it feeling being stuck at home for a change and not traveling all over Africa?
Yeah, more of the traveling is done now online, doing all these international calls on Zoom and Skype and what have you.
Yes. Well, we're very glad to have you with us this evening. Thanks, Simi. Sam, you're up next. Will you share your journey into conservation with us, please?
Sure. So to start off with, what I do now is my job is to help ensure that clean energy, so by that I mean renewable energy and wind and solar energy in South Africa, is not only clean, but it's also green. So I try and help minimize the negative effects it has on biodiversity. So what that means is I engage with policy, I develop guidelines, I keep up to date with research and technology, and I work with a whole range of stakeholders, from government officials, wind energy developers, environmental consultants, as well as researchers. And I get to do a teeny little bit of research myself, but that's not a sort of key focus of my job. How did I get into conservation? Well, I'm not really sure. I think it's always been a passion of mine. I've got a sort of passion for truth and justice and for the environment, so it's a natural match. When I first got to university, I actually wanted to be a marine biologist, although I'm scared of the ocean. But that was just because it was fashionable. Everybody in those days, which was quite a while ago, wanted to be a marine biologist. And once I got to university, I discovered the amazing world of, another botanist. Botany, just absolutely intriguing, and how everything's interconnected. And I just completely fell in love with ecology and botany and conservation. I'm really a generalist at heart, so my conservation career has kind of meandered all over the place, but always with a kind of eye on environmental sustainability and finding a balance between people and the environment.
Thank you, Sam. And Sam really is our sort of climate warrior. She helps keep all of us on track and keeps pushing our organization to be more climate smart going forward. So thank you for pushing all of us to be better climate warriors, Sam. We really do value your encouragement. Alrighty, Reason, will you tell us your story?
Hi, good people. I hope you are all doing well. I'm Reason Nyengera. I was born and brought up in Zim. And I grew up in the rural area of Mashingo, which is mainly like depend on subsistence farming. So it's like they mainly depend on livestock and crops for only food and other socio-economic requirements. So being there, I felt there is a need of us to conserve our natural resources, which we heavily depend on since we are subsistent. And then I went to the college and I did forest and wildlife management, which I then came to South Africa in trying to further my education and clear my career path. And now I'm working for the Albert Task Force. So what I do, I go out to sea with the fishermen and try to reduce the birds that are being killed on the trawlers or on the long liners. So that is what I'm doing currently. I also work with other groups as well, like WWF and other non-governmental organizations in the government as well, in trying to push towards sustainable development of the oceans and all those things. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Reason. Yeah, and Reason shared some really amazing stories with our staff a couple of weeks back. It was really a miracle that Reason ended up in conservation with BirdLife South Africa, and we're really, really proud to have you on the team. And Reason spends a lot of time out at sea, and I'm sure he's going to tell us a little bit more about that later on. So thanks for being here tonight, Reason.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Karina, let's hear your story, please.
So hi again. So the Ingula project manager position is not really well or very explanatory. So I basically work to ensure sufficient habitat for our endemic and grassland species, endemic and threatened grassland species. And I also work with the farmers in the Eastern Free State to protect their land through formal declaration of a protected environment. I grew up on a farm, so that's where my passion started for working with farmers. The conservation field has always been my passion, and I volunteered during my studies at any wildlife facility I could find. The first one being a raptor rehabilitation center in Western Cape. I started studying BSc tourism with zoology and botany, and subsequently also completed a MSc in environmental sciences from the Northwest University. And my postgrad studies were focused on birds first, and then afterwards I also did a little bit of frog parasitology. So realizing that that's not what I want to go into, I returned to birds and did a research internship at the Center for Environmental Management at the University of the Free State before I got the position with BirdLife in 2017. I love working with conservation because I'm a really curious person, and I get to do research while being out in the field, doing monitoring, and learning continuously about nature, its intricacies and its harmonies. So yeah, that's about what I'm what I'm doing and how I got here. So
thank you so much, Karina. We really do have a diverse background of skills, from frogs to botany and all sorts of other things in between. So really great to have you here as well. And I think Karina is probably one of our more full-time field positions. So the sort of dream conservation job is what Karina's doing. Great. So last but not least, I'll quickly share my journey with all of you. So I've always been passionate about the environment from an early age. If I was out in the garden, I was more than happy. And I was very lucky to have a family that allowed me to foster that love and passion for the environment. And I think when I went out to the United Kingdom for a gap year post high school, I realized just how much I missed the African bushveld and just being in Africa and our wonderful nature and spaces that we can head out to and explore. So I started up a BSc in Zoology and Ecology at Wits, and that eventually developed into an honours and a PhD. And much like Sam and Bazeng, I also, funnily enough, come out of the botanical fields. So I did a PhD degree on savanna ecology, studying the phenology of savanna trees in relation to rainfall. So we seem to have this common thread of ecologists at BirdLife South Africa who ultimately find their way to birds. So nice to have some fellow ecologists in the fold with me. But I was really lucky to be offered an internship position at BirdLife South Africa as I finished up my PhD. And I started that in 2017. I worked under Linda, funny enough. In 2017, I was her intern, and she really did a phenomenal job of fostering me and throwing me in the deep end and making me swim. But I cut my teeth in the conservation space, and I was really lucky to be offered a full-time position as the Raptor and Large Terrestrial Bird Project Manager. And from there, I have moved up, and I'm now managing our landscape conservation program at BirdLife South Africa. And so I get to work with some incredible people that you can see on the screen here working to save our terrestrial or land-based species at BirdLife South Africa. And I really just want to say that I love conservation because it gives me an opportunity to do something meaningful every single day. And I get a platform from which to share my passion and my love for nature with the world, as well as carrying out my personal vendetta and mission, which is to try and educate people about the environment and the importance of protecting nature for the many generations that will come after us. And I really do want to see us leave a better world than the one that we found. So I'd like to thank all of you for sharing your journeys and your questions with us so far. And I think we're going to start moving into the live questions now. So buckle your seatbelts, everyone. I hope you guys are ready on the panel. I see we've already got a few coming through in the Q&A box. But we're going to kick off with Henry Humphreys. And he is age 12 years old. And Henry very kindly emailed this question in from Hoedspruit earlier on. So Linda, this one's coming for you. Henry's asking, is the Repulse vulture a bird that can fly the highest and still be able to see animals on the ground?
Well, that is a very good question, and I actually had to Google that. Ripples, they are indeed the highest flying bird in the world, and they can fly as birds were recorded as high as 11,000 meters. So when you keep in mind that Mount Everest is just under 9,000 meters, that should give you an idea of how high that is. Whether they can see animals from that height, I don't know. It seems unlikely to me.
Thanks, Linda, and very glad that you had a chance to Google that. That's what an amazing animal that can go that high. Sam, this next one I'm going to pose to you. If you'll answer first, and then Bazeng, if you can answer after Sam has answered, please. This one's coming in from Jessica, who's age 16 in Fourways, Johannesburg. Why did you choose to get involved specifically in bird conservation rather than some of the more charismatic animals like lions or rhinos, as most typically do?
Well, that's a really good question. I think birds chose me. The whole issue with wind energy and birds suddenly became a big thing, and I had lots of experience working with environmental impact assessments and conservation. So it was a really exciting new field to be in. Why not lions and rhinos? I've never really had a passion for rhinos and lions. I think it's probably because I always fight for the underdog. And there's so many people doing amazing work out there already on the big five and more, that I kind of want to fight for the birds out there that aren't in nature reserves, for example, or the little bookies and blommetjies that are in our neighborhood. That's probably why.
Thanks, Sam. Zeng, how about you?
Yeah, also just like Sam, I think the birds also found me. I didn't, it wasn't my field of interest. Like I said, when I introduced myself, I'm a botanist, so a plant scientist. But just to say, even if you study plants, plants don't live in isolation. So they need other organisms like birds for pollination, for dispersal. So understanding these interactions between plants and other organisms like birds is key to ensuring their survival. And also with my interest in working at a landscape level, birds are amongst the many engineers of like your ecosystem sustainability. So they provide, like I said, they disperse your seeds, they pollinate your plants, and they make them to survive.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to both of you. Great. This next one is coming up for Karina, and then I'm going to ask Reason to follow up with an answer. So this is coming from Alex, who's age 13 in Strand. Reason, you still there with us? Yes. And Alex is asking, what drew you to become a conservationist? So Karina, if you'll start us off, please.
In my case, it was mostly curiosity. When I was about probably 9 years old, I met someone who seemed to know literally everything about ecology and nature. She was a very big influence in my life, just because of her knowledge, and I wanted to be like her. So because I was so curious, I started seeing all the small creatures and colors and the interesting shapes of everything around me. And yeah, that was basically how I got hooked into nature conservation as a general.
Fantastic. And Reason, how about you?
Sorry, I was
Oh, did you drop
offline.
there? So Alex was
Yeah.
asking, what drew you to become a conservationist?
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, like I grew up in the rural areas, and then I had a much more link with nature, and then we're more like dependent on it for firewood, for raising our cattle, for farming and everything. So it's like I felt like by then like there is a need for us to live in harmony with this nature, because it's the one which makes us survive. So that's why I went and do forest and wildlife management, so that we can have something that we can, like mainly initially I wanted to go into agroforestry, where we can just at the same time as we are growing our crops, we can have the forest, we can have our birds and everything. And then when I was young as well, I used to keep some doves, and I used to follow like let's say ground hornbills, and my favorite bird was African fish eagle, because it was my mother's totem. So I always cherish it. And then every time when we see birds and wild animals, we were like, just gave us that excitement. And then we're also cattle headers. So every time when we're out there, we just come across different things. So that gave me the passion to
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Reason. All right, Linda, this next one's coming for you as the probably most current student on the panel. Those of you who don't know, Linda's busy taking on the challenge of a full-time job and a PhD at the same time. So we wish her all the best with that. But we've got a few questions here asking about what the specific subjects that people should be looking to do. So I think, Linda, if you can answer from a sort of high school level and then also at a varsity level, please. So that's coming from Luke Bridle and Anonymous.
Oh, from a high school level, well, that takes me back to the early 90s. I can't really remember. I don't think it's really important at a high school level. Obviously, it will be beneficial if you did biology and maybe a little bit of mathematics. although I don't think that's it's a requirement anymore. In terms of studying a BSc, obviously is beneficial. My main subjects were zoology and botany, which again, I mean, you can come from a wide range of backgrounds. I mean, I'm surrounded by ecologists, as you pointed out. What is important, I think, is that you've got get a good statistical background, because I think if you plan on doing research, then it's important to have a solid grounding in that. For me, that is the most important aspect, I'd say.
Thanks, Linda. I totally agree. And there was a question also asking specifically around genetics and botany versus zoology. It really, if you've got that science grounding, that's the important thing. And if you can go through that BSc process and ultimately find whatever makes you tick, and then pursue whichever line of biological sciences is really for you, that'll set you up for a good conservation career for sure. Thanks so much, Linda. All right, Jonathan Breitenbach is asking, what specific field in the area of conservation in South Africa currently needs the most attention, volunteers, funds, employees, etc.? So Sam, I'm going to kick you off on this one, and then we're gonna jump over to Karina after that.
I would say two things which are probably showing my complete and utter bias. I would say when it comes to renewable energy, we hope to see a lot more renewable energy in South Africa, and particularly the rest of Africa as well. And this brings a whole suite of new challenges and new threats to birds. And we could do with a lot more information about where birds are located and their life cycle, so we can understand, so we can do population viability analyses. There's a huge amount of information that even citizen scientists can contribute to. And then, of course, climate change is just a massive, massive new thing coming our way. And if we can understand better which species are going to be affected, how they're going to be affected, and if and how we can conserve them in that face of that new threat, yeah, I would definitely say we need a lot more work in that field.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Sam. Karina, do you have anything to add to that?
Actually, I was going to say climate change as well. So especially in the grasslands where I'm working, climate change is just and then also land management is a massive thing that you have to work with. Actually getting the farmers' attention to these threats to the birds, and explaining to them how the threats not only are they applicable to the birds, but it's also going to influence their livestock production and their future on the farms. So getting all of that out to them, but yeah, my biggest thing was also climate change, getting to know not only where the birds are, but how their populations are doing in those areas where they are under severe threat. And that's a lot that citizen scientists can help with through platforms like atlasing or something like that.
Yeah,
I want to go to atlasing right now. There's been a webinar on that. So.
Yeah, go visit our YouTube page and watch Ernst Retief's SABAP webinar if you want to find out all about atlasing. But I think you raise a really valid point there, Karina, that understanding how we can work with landowners like farmers to farm in ways that benefit biodiversity is something that BirdLife's doing a lot of, and something that I know you engage with every single day. We can still have very meaningful agricultural activity without wiping out our biodiversity. So merging those two fields and making sure that we're having great productive ecosystem services, but also agricultural services, and making sure that we all survive is so key. We obviously need those healthy ecosystems to make our agriculture profitable and functional. So keep doing the work you're doing. It's really great to have that work under BirdLife South Africa's belt. Okay, Linda, we've got another question that might need some Googling here for you. So Scott Warburton is asking, hi Linda, I seem to be hearing a lot about palm nut vultures on the KZN South Coast and even in Pinetown. how heavily do they actually rely on the palm nut palm trees? I assume he's speaking about the raffia palms that are notorious with northern Zululand.
I have no idea. I'm sorry, this is outside my field of expertise. The palm nut vulture is not actually a true vulture, so I'm not actually working with that. My excuse.
All good. I see
Mark.
Mark Anderson has jumped in here. Our CEO, who's also quite a vulture enthusiast, has jumped in. So Mark is saying the palm nut vulture mainly eats palm fruits, so Raffia australis, but they also do eat fish, crabs, small mammals, and even insects such as termites. So they can scavenge and therefore can move along the south coast if need be. Thanks, Mark, for jumping in there. Always good to have our boss man assisting. All right, I see we've got quite a, yeah, thanks, Mark. We've got quite a number of questions coming in and asking about volunteer opportunities. And this is something that I know a lot of youth are really, really keen to do. I myself did a few volunteering stints for a number of different conservation NGOs and rehab centers through the years. It is difficult finding those gaps to try and get involved in, but it can be such valuable experience. So I don't know if my colleagues on the panel, I know Karina, you briefly mentioned that you spent some time at a raptor rehab and some other different conservation NGOs. If all of you would mind just sharing if you have done any volunteering in the past and what that sort of experience was like for you and what you gained from it leading up to your career. So shall we start off, Karina, if you want to just elaborate on your initial volunteering discussion, please.
The raptor rehab I volunteered at was actually where I started all of this, and it's introduced me firstly to birds. Prior to that, I didn't know any birds, so that's kind of where I started with birds in general as well. So the most important thing I learned there is that it may seem like a wonderful thing to do volunteer work, but you're going to be working really, really hard. You're going to do all the crappy work. Afterwards, I did volunteer at a cheetah center as well, and I volunteered at a rhino orphanage as well. So, but it's all, you can't really put into words the experiences of all these different volunteering opportunities. I would encourage you to do them because you learn so much about work ethic, about what conservation is really about, and all the threats and challenges faced in conservation. I think if you can find a volunteering opportunity, that has been one of the most valuable experiences of my life, was actually going out and volunteering at as many institutions I could find. So yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Thanks, Karina. And I think, yeah, don't be scared to be proactive and knock on doors of organizations. Put your hand up and say, I'm willing to do the slug. I'll come file your mailers or whatever. Just knock on doors, put your name out there, make those connections. I was lucky enough to work at Chimp Eden for 2 weeks way back in the day, and that was purely because I put my hand up and said, I'll do whatever you need me to do. I'm a free body, please use me. And yeah, I got a great opportunity to go and work with some amazing primates down in Nelspruit. So I don't know if any of our other panelists have done any volunteering and want to put forth. Sam,
yeah, I can.
Sorry, okay, we'll do Sam and then Reason. Perfect.
Yeah, I've certainly, I think, got my first job in the environmental sector through volunteering, and I think a lot of conservationists can say the same thing. But it does help to have realistic expectations of your volunteering. Often volunteers don't have the skills necessary to do the job, so they land up getting dog's body work. But it's a great way to learn about an organization, learn about their ethics, and the kind of work that you might want to do one day. But don't volunteer with the expectation you're going to fulfill one of our jobs, because we've studied long and hard and got years of experience. And you probably don't want to sit in front of a computer all day. So.
Absolutely. Reason.
Yeah. My volunteering thing is it was a quite more different thing, because it's like as soon as I finished my BSc honors in Zim, the economic situation there was not great, and then I had to move to South Africa, and then from there it's like I had a friend of mine who was studying at the UCT, so I was just helping him on his studies, like anything, field work and all those things. So I was helping an individual doing his work, while I'm gaining experience in that regards, as well as creating links. So it's not necessarily that you need an organization for you to volunteer and gain some experience. It's like you can just individuals, and you can just help individuals. Then you'll be gaining experience as well and creating new links for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, Reason. Being a field assistant can be such a valuable experience. I know many of the postgraduate students who go out often need an extra set of hands. And if you're in your undergrad or honors year, it can be really, really great experience to head out with these postgraduate students and just do that little bit of assistant work that helps them get their projects done. I know when I was doing my PhD at Nails Flare, I had a number of different undergrads come through and assist me measuring trees and all sorts of stuff. So chat to your senior postgrads, chat to your lecturers, see if there's any field projects running that you can get involved with. Even if you're just the one scribing, you can learn so much being in the field and making those connections. So it's always a good idea to link up with your sort of university networks if you are at a university level. Great.
Yeah, just to add to what Melissa said, most of you that are graduate students also look out for your supervisors. They have so many interesting projects around the country, and they go out to the field. You can volunteer even in the labs. You know, they have many projects that are ongoing in the labs. You can volunteer and learn those soft skills. And I guess also the government has some programs. I think I don't know if it's still existing, but it was with Sunby. It was called Green Sedenza, where they give you opportunities to even come and sit like at Sunby and do some work on plants, on different animals, and learn some skills for a few years. It's a year actually. And then you get more opportunities to get into the workforce.
Definitely. And I think one of the skills that's so key getting into conservation is starting to learn how to collect data, and something like the atlasing project with SABAP. If you go out with your local bird clubs, going out to do an atlasing project, that's fieldwork, that's collecting data that is hugely valuable for people like us at BirdLife South Africa. If you use the iNaturalist app, which is a great app for collecting general biodiversity data sightings wherever you are in the world. If you see a flower, you can take a picture of it, load it up onto iNaturalist with GPS coordinates, and that all goes into a big database, which helps us understand how things are changing across the world. So that in itself is still valuable volunteering and skills development. So you might not even need to have that formal relationship with an organization. Getting involved in something like citizen science is still a very valuable move in your sort of conservation journey. So I encourage everyone to get involved with whatever citizen science projects sort of tickle your fancy. Go and pursue them and chat to the more experienced people that have collected data on those projects and really learn how to do it. Okay, my questions are jumping all over the place here. So this one I'm going to give to Karina. Caroline Champions asking, how is BirdLife South Africa changing the way farmers work to ensure better cooperation between farmers and birds to improve biodiversity?
Hi, Caroline. So basically what we're doing is we're just I'm at this stage trying to sensitize them, to tell them about the birds firstly, tell them about the birds in their area, what the threats are to the birds, and then try to get them to, in my area, overgrazing, or in some cases undergrazing, which is both very, very bad for the ecology of the system, is a big problem, as well as burning too frequently, etc. We're trying to show them through science, and we've got a really brilliant scientist, Robin Cullen, who's been doing this for a couple of years before me even, trying to sensitize them to the fact that showing them through data that fields that are often or burnt more often than others tend to have less biodiversity, tend to have less birds, and then using the raw science to persuade them. It is it sounds relatively simple as I put it, but it's a way of changing their minds and their opinions. These are methods that they've come from their grandfathers taught them how to farm, and you've got to change your mindset completely. So it's a gradual process of showing them through science how to better farm, and how not only are the birds increasing, but showing them through their own livestock that their livestock production's better, because now the field's doing better. There's more grass, there's more production, getting things back to a natural state, or close to natural state as possible. So yeah, that's basically what we're doing. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'm trying.
Thanks so much, Karina. Okay, this one's from Khaladi, and I apologize if I've got that pronunciation wrong. How have you all been affected by the pandemic that's going on in your sort of day-to-day jobs? Has it had a major impact on the work that you're doing? Are you able to work around the pandemic conditions? And have you noticed any interesting behavioral changes in any of the birds around you because of the lockdown and the sort of minimization of movement of people? So I think we'll start off with Linda, and we'll just go around the panel and see how everyone's lockdown experience has gone.
Yeah, yes and no, it has affected my work. Like Karina, I do a similar type of work. I do stewardship kind of work in terms of my Vulture Safe Zone work. And it's highly beneficial to meet with people often, to keep them on side, you know, to make sure that the project still runs smoothly. And in that effect, in that way, it has affected my work. I wasn't able to move around as much. For instance, I've got a very important project going on in the Zululand area, and I've not been able to travel there for the last 3 months. But we're getting there. I had to change the way I was doing things. I had to rely on people on the ground there who are meeting with the farmers and making sure, delivering letters that I write to them to make sure that things happen on the ground. In terms of my research, obviously things have halted there a bit. For instance, I had to do some analyses at BITS and the University of Johannesburg, which is now being delayed because of that. But then again, you must just switch things around. I think it's a part of life. You must just be adaptable. So I'm in the process of planning research that I hopefully will get to do in September and October. So you must just think, you must just be clever in the way you're doing things and adapt, which is, as I'm sure all of you will agree, is part of this job, because no single day is ever the same, and there are always unexpected things happening. And if you're uncomfortable working in that sort of environment, then maybe conservation is not for you.
Thanks, Linda. Bazeng, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's affected my work greatly, because I mostly work in supporting other African countries to build capacity. But it's also presented many opportunities, you know, in terms of doing things differently. We can save costs by running workshops online. But again, in most African countries, they are not very fortunate like South Africa with high internet connectivity. So working with them sometimes on platforms like Zoom or Skype, you take just hours and hours for people to join the meeting, and people jump out of the meeting from time to time. So it's challenging, but yeah, we find different ways of trying to advance our work even with these challenges.
Thanks, Bazeng. Reason, how about you?
Yeah, it has affected us to a lesser extent, that I'm no longer able to go out to sea, to join the fishermen during their fishing operations. But however, it has made us think of other options which we have to use. So now we are working with things like Global Fish Watch, which is an online database which shows where the vessels are going. And then we are also trying to use sea-based tracking data and use new technology to achieve the same goal which we were achieving when we were going out to sea. So it's an opportunity. It opens a new opportunities for other forms of reach to the people. So I think it's I'm happy. I'm okay.
Thanks, Reason. And Sam, how about you?
Yeah, so my work doesn't involve a lot of field work, so fortunately I haven't been negatively affected in that way. It does entail a lot of computer work and a lot of meetings, and I've been super excited to see how things have changed, that now having Zoom meetings is standard, and everybody thought it wasn't possible. Obviously nobody wants to see COVID happening, but from a climate change perspective, it does mean we don't need to travel quite as often as we used to. So going forward, I think we're going to be having a lot more online meetings and workshops, and it is possible. And so we can reduce our carbon footprint. Where it is a little tricky is that sometimes you can't replace having a one-on-one or human-to-human conversation with someone, especially when things are a little bit tricky or a little bit heated. It does help to be in the same room with somebody. So I do miss being able to do that.
Absolutely. And I think from a noticing bird behavior point of view, Karina, you've probably seen the biggest changes at your field side, having been gone for a little while and now coming back.
Yeah, well, the migrants are gone. So that's the biggest change I've seen, is that the numbers dropped severely. But yeah, overall, we've had much more cranes in the Eastern Free State this year than we've had the last couple of years, which is probably, and I've spoken to our reserve manager or ecologist at Sequiflay Nature Reserve as well, and they reported exactly the same. Booming numbers of blue cranes suddenly appearing, and they're not disturbed, so suddenly it's really good to see them out and about. Other than that, I've been missing sites of so much, where I've had to go to Ingula at least, well, most of the weeks, every day of the week, to do my monitoring. I've been stuck at home, but it has given me a lot of time to catch up on admin, which usually falls behind, and yeah, really excited that I can be back on site now. I'm looking forward to see even more changes occurring while I'm going back now. And I've been back to site twice and already saw more than 100 blue cranes, so I'm really excited.
Sure. Yeah, I think with everybody locked up inside for a couple of weeks, it's definitely given nature space to breathe. And I know there's been some amazing videos showing what the animals have been getting up to without human presence around. So if anyone does have any fun and interesting stories, you're welcome to share those on our Facebook page with us. Let us know what you guys have been noticing. But certainly here in the Blegari area where I stay, you could noticeably see the birds enjoying the freedom that was given to them without lots of noise and lots of traffic. There's way more fiscal flycatchers that have come in during the winter now. Just nice to watch the seasons changing and the animals having space to be themselves. But I agree with you, Sam. This has really forced everyone to look at the way we do business, and it's great to see that we can do these Zoom meetings and reduce having to travel all over the place and put all that carbon into the atmosphere. So it's not all doom and gloom coming out of this COVID experience, but obviously we do hope that we get on top of the COVID pandemic going forward as soon as possible, and that everyone who is unfortunately has taken ill gets better and we don't lose too many more people to this horrible virus. But Reason, this next one's for you, and it actually comes from one of our colleagues, Carl Walker. Carl, I hope you're not jumping ship from raptors to seabirds here, but he's asking, can anyone volunteer to help with the Albatross Task Force trawl line mitigation project?
Yes, you can volunteer as long as you are willing to go out to sea and with the fishermen. Of course, as it is real, I cannot promise saying that you are going to be comfortable with the work and all those things, because it's a tough job. It's like the conditions are not that good to be out. Although it takes like your passion and everything, your devotion for nature conservation and everything, of which sometimes I don't want to sound as if I'm saying that it's bad, but you just have to be prepared and to go out to sea. And then we have got also other projects, like, for example, which I mentioned, like the use of Global Fish Watch, like where you can just sit on the computer and then do the analysis and all those things, which you are willing to have someone to help with that, if you have got skills of coding and all those things. And then we've got other things like social media as well, which need some people who can speak eloquently, not as the same as Reason was doing, and spread the message of the albatrosses and stuff like that, of which there are so many other options, depending on what exactly are you passionate of. So we also need the link, like the bridge between our scientific work and the people as well, and someone who can spread our message and in a better way.
Fantastic. And Reason, will you just elaborate a little bit of what your sort of day-to-day life is like when you're on these fishing vessels, and what you get up to and what you have to do?
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I think it comes back again to the people. It's like you become like people management. You are meeting new people every time, and then those people, they've got their own way of thinking, which is much more different from yours. Not that they are thinking in a wrong way, but they are thinking in their own, because what they are worried about is to catch more fish. So if they've got good bags, and then they're happy, and then sometimes you find out they are not catching enough, and then they get frustrated, and then there you are trying to explain to them like about seabirds and all those things. So it takes a little bit of more like soft skills which you need in terms of interacting with the fishermen. So sometimes it's energy taking and all those things. I see some people, they get frustrated with that, but it's a learning curve. And then I always get excited when I get on the vessel, and then the fishermen are thinking like, this person is not cool. And then afterwards, they know about myself, they know about the birds and all those things. Their perception has changed, and then they are also happy. And then after that, you hear them calling and saying that, Reason, we have done this, we have done that. And then it shows that they have changed their perception. So I think it's quite, there's a lot of soft skills which are needed, not a hardcore scientific narrative or conservative narrative. So you just need to have those soft skills.
Thanks, Reason. And I think that's such an excellent point. As conservationists, we wear so many different hats. I know from every single day, I wear a fundraising hat, a marketing hat, and I wear a webinar hat. We've got to wear sort of negotiator hats. So you've got to really have a diverse set of skills to work in this industry. And I agree with you, those soft skills and being able to engage people is so, so key. And Simi, this next one's coming to you. It's from Tato Malloy. And Tato's saying, seeing that BirdLife involves many stakeholders, how difficult is it to come to an agreement with them, as some might be hesitant to change their way of doing things? Now, I know you go out into many different African countries and negotiate with them, trying to get them to do their KBA and red listing processes. Can you just elaborate on how you sort of go about doing that?
Yeah, thank you. I think you need a lot of people skill, how to manage people, because when you work across Africa like I do, you deal with different personalities. So trying to engage with them and getting to understand their culture at times also is very important. So yeah, even in sense of conservation, it becomes very, very, very difficult and challenging, because what some people feel like is better for the country, in other countries it's not the same. So I'll just give an example. For example, the elephant. So you have the elephants are a big problem in I think in Southern Africa, but when you go to East Africa and more up, you see the populations are not that dwindling. So you find people who come up with suggestions like culling of the elephants and all those solutions, and they want to generalize it to make it like a solution for everyone. And countries keep fighting and trying to negotiate from their own point of view and also based on their culture.
Thanks, Simi. Great point there. This next one is for Sam, and Sam, it's from Bianca Janssen van Buren, I think it was. My screen is moving again. She's asking, do you think that green energy can be brought fully into South Africa and Africa? And can you elaborate on what the best way to go about doing that will be, please?
Sure. I'm not quite sure what she means by brought fully into South Africa. If she means that will we be 100% renewable, I believe one day yes, but it's going to take us a long time to get to that point. We hoping for sort of 40% by 2030 is optimistic scenario. But what I find really, really exciting is that the price of renewable energy in South Africa, wind and solar energy, has plummeted over the years. So it's actually cheaper to build and get energy from a new wind or solar energy plant than a coal plant. And historically, renewable energy has always been seen as super expensive and coal seen as a cheaper option. But it not only makes environmental sense, but it also makes economic sense today.
Thanks, Sam. Now we've got Lindsay Mandy, who said that she is an MA political science student, and she's looking at the politics of conservation. So that's quite an interesting field right there. But she's really asking, she wants to find out if the importance that we've sort of placed through this webinar series, having these hard scientific and academic backgrounds in BirdLife's research into conservation, just how important is it to have these hard scientific solutions present? And I think something that is so important for us as BirdLife South Africa, and I think it's within our mission statement even, is that all of the decisions that we take are based on scientific research. We don't just move in and do rash decisions to try and save species or habitats. Everything that we do, we like to have that scientific basis to inform whatever decisions we take. And I know Linda's done a lot of really great research on lead and vultures and the impacts that lead is having on vultures. And so Linda, I don't know if you want to elaborate a bit on the kind of research that you're doing and what the sort of end goal is to that research and having a sort of an application in the conservation space.
Yeah, Melissa, I can't agree with you more. I mean, the whole problem of lead in vultures, we didn't really know if there was a problem. And it's very difficult to do any kind of policy and advocacy work if you don't really know what you're talking about, if you don't even actually know if there is a problem. And that is where research plays such an important role. And my work on vultures, for instance, we didn't know if there was a problem with lead, and I found out that there was, and that vultures, more than any other raptor or large terrestrial species for that matter, was facing massive exposure to lead poisoning. And we believe that it's coming from lead ammunition from all sorts of sources. So we will not be able to, through the National Lead Task Team, engage with government to talk about the problem of lead in nature, not just lead ammunition. We're talking about lead sinkers as well, if we didn't have the research to back that up.
Thanks so much, Linda.
Just to add to Linda, I mean, also in terms of the red listing, what we do just to know if a species is critically endangered, extinct, you need a whole lot of research that goes into understanding the ecology of the species, where the species live. You need to understand the threats that the species are facing. And then once you know the conservation status of the species, now you can then use that to inform various policies and or programs that can be used to save the species.
Yes, excellent point there, Bizing. Yeah, absolutely. I see Cameron's asking for Reason's email address. Sorry, Sam, I'll give you a gap in a second. Cameron, if you go onto our BirdLife South Africa website, there's a Meet the Team page, and you can find all of our staff members' contact details on that page. Thanks for that question. Sam, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say that conservation has to be science-based, but that doesn't mean that conservation ends with the science. That's just one step in conservation. So science for science sake is one thing, that's not conservation, and what we're really trying to do is bridge that gap between science and implementation. But it's, yeah, what we do isn't only pure science.
Great. No, I totally agree with you, Sam. Now, I want to ask each of you, we've gone past 8 o'clock, so we'll start slowly winding down. But I wanted to ask each of you what your sort of personal highlight has been so far in your conservation careers, if you have one at hand that you can share with all of us. I don't know if anyone wants to offer theirs first. I know for me it was, I was lucky enough to be part of the expedition team out to Ethiopia in 2018 to finally crack the call of the white-winged flufftail. And our colleague who was meant to be with us this evening, Robin Killane, who unfortunately took ill just before this webinar, him and I headed out to Ethiopia, and we were really, really lucky to be the first people to ever actually hear the call of the white-winged flufftail. So that was an amazing experience for me, and it's been an absolute game changer. Karina deployed some audio devices into a wetland in the Free State, and because we have that call now, which was a scientific exercise, we can use it to start finding these birds all over the show. So we're very lucky to have that at our disposal to try and understand where these white-winged flufftails are. And I was very lucky to be a part of that sort of eureka moment back in 2018. All right, who would like to share their highlights next?
Melissa, if I can
Yes,
jump in.
Karina.
I think one of my highlights is very similar to yours, is actually being part of the white-winged flufftail group and going out and working in these wetlands. And yeah, also hearing the call while in the field is quite a spectacular moment in my life. But second highlight for me is just getting so much participation from the farmers to conserve their grassland habitats for yellow-breasted pipits and cranes and all of these threatened grassland species. We've got a group of 19 landowners who's just signed up to save or to protect their farms voluntarily, completely voluntarily, and it really it's one of my personal highlights is to actually get them this far. To their next step is formal declaration of their properties as protected environments, but for me, one of my biggest highlights is just getting them so far to voluntarily sign up.
Fantastic, thanks, Karina. Reason, what's been your highlight so far?
Yeah, mine is a little bit much more different. My highlight is like when I felt like, because it's like all along I've been longing for my career and to improve my career and all those things. And then the time when I got into Albatross Task Force, which is a group of amazing people, and then we went to Argentina for a workshop, and then that was my first international trip. I was not privileged enough to be moving around, well, at least I was young or whenever. So that was part of my highlight. And then meeting more people like who speak Spanish, and then you have to translate, and it's like it was great. Like I felt like I'm important sometimes, and then yeah, it's great.
Absolutely, thank you, Reason. Linda, how about you?
I think there's a lot of traveling involved. I mean, Melissa, I'm sure this is one of your favorites as well. A couple of years ago, Melissa and I were fortunate enough to walk the length of the Renewable River in Kruger in search of black stork nests, and we did that for a couple of years. That will always stay with me. But I think from a personal point of view, it's also research-based. I recently looked at the response of vultures to lead their blood and their ability to manufacture hemoglobin. And to do that, I had to bring methodologies to South Africa that's never been done in Africa, for that matter. And that's now been implemented, and we're ready to publish that. And it shows how a vulture's ability to manufacture hemoglobin decreases with the increased lead levels in their blood. And I found that very, I'm chuffed about that.
Absolutely, Linda, and I totally agree with you. That opportunity to walk in the north of Kruger was something I will always treasure very, very close to my heart. Simi, how about you?
Yeah, I think my biggest highlight has also been in the space of research. When I was doing my PhD, and even after my PhD, being part of a research group that helped to develop the global standard for easing species identification using molecular techniques, and then just seeing how much this tool has been used to solve biodiversity challenges in terms of identifying species has really been the biggest highlight for me. And also, I mean, the many exotic places I traveled to while collecting plants across South Africa and in many other African countries was like really a big highlight for me.
Definitely, yeah. There are some amazing travel perks being in the conservation sector. I think Zing is an excellent beneficiary of those perks. And last up, Sam, how about you? What's been your big highlight?
I think my career's been a whole bunch of little highlights, maybe not one big thing. But I think that the first time I realized that I could positively influence the process. So I can't remember what kind of development was proposed, but they were going to wipe out probably quite a small patch now of critically endangered vegetation and a wetland. And through my interacting with that process, we eventually stopped those habitats to be lost. And I was like, wow, you know, an individual can actually make a difference in these things. And yeah, I think that was quite a big highlight for me. And yeah, my career's been kind of those little wins all the way along, and sometimes I need to step back and remind myself of those.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and we've been talking a lot about the positives of being in conservation and how awesome it is and how much we love our work, but there are those days where you really do need to take that step back and think of those small victories and big victories, and just remind yourself that we are up against an enormous challenge to protect our natural world. And so I know Linda and I in particular have shared many a coffee over a gloomy morning trying to re-motivate ourselves, but having that ability to lean on each other and remind each other that we're out there trying to make a difference, many other people are out there trying to make a difference. And can you imagine where we'd be if we weren't out there trying to make a difference? We'd have a very different looking world. So to anyone out there working in conservation, whether you're an official conservationist or just a conservationist at heart, trying to make your small difference in the world, keep making those small differences because they all add up and they make a huge difference in the big fight. So thank you to everyone. And I see our colleague Ernst has made a great comment in the chat room that I just want to highlight as well. Ernst is saying that he just wants to make the comment that most of the conservation issues we deal with can be linked to human behavior. And he believes that there is a place for people studying social sciences to get involved in conservation and make a big difference. And thank you, Ernst, for that comment. I think that is an excellent point. We are the dominant species on this planet, and we have the power to make a difference. So I hope that everyone will go out there and keep making their small differences in their circles, and hopefully those will ripple into big change. Now, I'd like to thank all of my panelists this evening for joining me. I really appreciate you guys giving up your Tuesday evening. There are many, many questions that we haven't unfortunately been able to get to. What we'll do is we'll take all of those questions, and we do have your emails from logging in. We'll try and send you your responses over the next couple of days. So apologies that we couldn't get to every single person's question tonight. Thank you all so much for tuning in and sending them through and engaging with the panel this evening. We need to announce our winner this evening, so I'm going to ask my panelists just to give us a drum roll while I bring up the winner of tonight's Conservationist Kickstarter pack. So we got a drrrr going. All right, and our very, very lucky winner this evening is Luke Bridle. Congratulations, Luke. Really, really well done. We're very proud to present you with your Conservationist Kickstarter pack. So I will be emailing you tomorrow just to arrange delivery of that. Well done, Luke, and thank you for your questions this evening. I saw a couple coming in from you. So well done, Luke. Okay, so without further ado, I need to just thank everyone so much for being a part of this evening's webinar. We really do enjoy sharing our stories with all of you, and I hope that you'll continue to join us on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. Thank you to Jacana for sponsoring that great prize, and please remember that if you didn't win this evening, you could still win the monthly book giveaway, which we'll be announcing at the end of June. So be sure to head on over to our website and enter that competition there. BirdLife's also got a number of other competitions that we've been advertising over the last couple of weeks. So make sure that you get your tickets for the jackpot birding and also the Conservation League donor competitions. You can stand a chance to win 100,000 Rand cash prize for the jackpot birding competition, and you can also win a pair of Zeiss binoculars if you sign up as a Conservation League donor. Next week's webinar is going to be Andrea Angel, who works with Reason in the Albatross Task Force. So be sure to tune in to hear all about the work on the high seas to save some of our amazing albatrosses and pelagic birds. And also be sure to tune in to the Better Birding webinar tomorrow. They'll be chatting about those very birds and giving you a few ID tips to make sure that you know all about your pelagic birds. So make sure to tune in with Dave and Mike tomorrow night at 7:30. So without further ado, thank you to all my panelists. Thank you to all of you. Please stay safe out there, stay warm, and keep your eyes on the skies and outside. Those birds are all around us waiting to be enjoyed. Good night, everybody, and keep safe. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
So much. Bye.
Cool.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.